Welcome back to my channel. This channel specializes in writing about epic tales and myths from around the world. Don't forget to like, share, comment, and subscribe to help me out. Today, we will dive into a story titled Genghis Khan, the Son of the Eternal Sky. Full epic story of the Mongol Emperor. Here is the detailed content. Prologue. Under the eternal sky. Before the world had kings, before walls and crowns and nations, there was only the sky, vast, eternal, unchanging. And beneath that sky roamed the children of the steppe, their lives bound to the wind, their hearts to the earth. They were a people without cities, yet their spirits were free as the hawk and fierce as the wolf. In their songs they spoke of Tengri, the Blue Father, who watched over all things but favored none until the day he chose one among men to bear his will. From the union of storm and silence, from hunger, betrayal, and unyielding fire, a boy was born beneath the endless sky, a boy who would become Temüjin. And later, Genghis Khan, the son of the eternal sky. He would unite what was broken, forged peace through war, and awaken a world that had forgotten the roar of freedom. His story is not only of conquest, but of destiny, loss, and the price of immortality. For the wind remembers all things, and the sky forgets nothing. Chapter I. The prophecy beneath the eternal sky. In the beginning, there was only the sky and the steppe. The eternal blue stretched without end, and beneath it, the earth rolled like the hide of a giant beast, vast, breathing, endless. The wind was its spirit, the rivers its veins, and the herds that roamed were the heartbeat of the world. From the heights of the heavens, Tengri, the eternal sky, gazed upon the steppe and saw chaos, tribes divided, brothers turned against one another, warriors born without purpose. And Tengri said, "The steppe has forgotten the sound of its own heart." So the sky summoned the spirits of wind and wolf, and from their union forged a single prophecy, a song carried on the cold breath of the northern wind. It spoke of one who would rise beneath the open heavens, born of hardship, bearing the mark of the wolf and the blessing of the sky. His destiny would be to bind the tribes of men as the stars abound in the firmament, scattered yet one in purpose. The spirits trembled at this decree, for whenever Tengri spoke prophecy, the steppe would change. Rivers would alter their course, storms would wake, and mountains would echo with the names of kings yet unborn. In the stillness of dawn, an old shaman of the Kamag tribe heard the wind whisper through the hollow bones of his tent. The sound was not of this world. It sang of birth and blood, of fire and destiny. The shaman cast his gaze upward and saw in the sky a vision, a wolf made of starlight, its eyes burning with divine flame. The wolf raised its head and howled toward Tengri, and from its breath came the image of a boy holding a red flame in his hand, a sign of life and war. Around him, shadows of countless riders galloped, their hooves shaking the earth, their banners rising like storm clouds. The shaman fell to his knees. "O eternal sky," he cried, "who is this child whose shadow commands empires?" And Tengri answered in a voice that was both thunder and whisper, "He shall come when the steppe is broken. He shall rise when tribes devour their brothers. He shall be called the Son of the Wolf. Through him I shall remind the earth of its unity." Far to the east, the rivers Annen and Kurlan flowed through lands of wild grass and silver mist. There, beneath a crescent moon, a chieftain's wife dreamed of the same wolf of starlight. It circled her in silence before bowing its head, touching her womb with its muzzle. When she awoke, she knew that life had entered her, a life marked by the sky itself. The months passed, and the land grew restless. Tribes fought for grazing lands, herds vanished in sudden storms, and shamans whispered that Tengri's breath stirred once more across the plains. On the night of the first frost, the woman gave birth in a tent woven with horsehair. As she labored, thunder rolled across the distant mountains, though the sky was clear. When the child emerged, he did not cry. Instead, he clenched his tiny hand around something dark and wet, a clot of blood the size of a walnut. The midwives gasped. "He holds blood in his fist," they murmured. He was born a warrior. The shaman who had seen the vision was brought to the child. He looked upon the newborn's eyes, black as obsidian, deep as the eternal steppe, and he trembled. "This is the one Tengri foretold," he whispered. "The sky has marked him, the spirits of the wolf and the wind." And so they named him Temüjin, meaning iron, for his will would be unbreakable. That night, the campfires of the tribe burned bright. Though none dared to sing, they felt the air grow thick with unseen power, as if the stars themselves bent low to look upon the child. The wolves on the hills howled in unison, not in hunger, but in reverence. In the heavens, Tengri watched in silence. The eternal sky had begun its great game. "Rise, my chosen," murmured the wind. "Your path shall be written in blood and fire, but through you, the tribes shall remember their song." The prophecy spread across the steppe like the flight of eagles, told in whispers, believed in fear. Some said the boy would bring glory, others said ruin, but all agreed. When the blue sky darkened and the wolves howled in daylight, the son of the prophecy would walk the earth. And so beneath the endless heavens, amid the scent of frost and the cry of horses, Temüjin, child of destiny, opened his eyes for the first time. He saw only sky. From that moment, the world itself seemed to bend around him. Grass bent in the wind as if bowing. Clouds parted when he rode upon his mother's back. The elders spoke his name with awe, the shamans in secret prayers, for they knew the truth. The eternal sky does not give lightly, nor does it take back what it has chosen. One day, this child would hold not blood, but nations in his hand, and the prophecy beneath the eternal sky would be fulfilled. Chapter 2. The Child of the Wolf and the Wind. The steppe is a merciless cradle. Those born beneath its vast blue sky must learn to crawl upon ice and feed on wind before they can walk among men. Temüjin, child of prophecy, was no exception. His cradle was not silk and gold, but the hardened earth of the Anin Valley, where wolves sang lullabies and frost bit like iron. From the moment of his birth, the spirits of the steppe whispered around him. The wind carried strange songs to his ears, and when he looked up, the clouds seemed to form the shapes of galloping horses and hunting wolves. His mother, Holon, often found him staring into the sky for hours, unblinking, as if listening to voices no one else could hear. "It is the breath of Tengri," she said softly. "The sky speaks to him." And so she raised him with reverence and fear. Reverence for the divine blood that flowed in him, and fear of what destiny might demand as its price. Temüjin grew strong swiftly. At 3 winters, he was walking through snow barefoot. At 5, he could throw a spear made for men. His father, Yasuge, the brave, watched with pride. "My son," he said, "was not born from a woman's womb alone, but from the sky itself." But the steppe does not bless without testing. When Temüjin was 9, his father took him on a journey to seek a bride among the Olkanot tribe, a bond of alliance and promise for peace. The journey was long and cold, crossing frozen rivers and endless plains. Along the way, Yasuge taught him the way of the wolf. Never hunt alone. Never sleep before the wind. Never turn your back to the north, for that is where Tengri breathes. At the campfires, the boy would ask, "Father, what is a Khan?" Yasuge smiled into the flames. A Khan is the voice of Tengri among men, not the master of tribes, but their servant. The sky does not choose kings for comfort, my son. It chooses them to endure. Temüjin remembered these words. They would become his creed in the years when all warmth was stripped from his life. When father and son reached the Okunat camp, Temüjin was betrothed to a young girl named Bert, whose eyes were dark and calm as still water. She gave him a single arrow feather as a token of promise, a symbol that their paths, though parted, would one day meet again. But fate moved swiftly. On the journey home, Yasuge shared a feast with strangers from a rival clan. They poisoned his drink, fearing the power of the man whose son carried Tengri's mark. By the time Yasuge reached his camp, he was dying. His lips were black, his breath shallow as wind through reeds. Before he fell silent, he grasped his son's hand. "Temüjin," he rasped, "remember this. The wolf hunts not for glory, but for survival. Lead with the sky, and it will not abandon you." Then the fire went out in his eyes. The death of Yasuge shattered the family. The tribe, fearing misfortune from Tengri's wrath, cast them out, Holen her children, and the boy who was supposed to be a Khan. They were left to wander the wilds with nothing but a few horses and their hunger. Winter came, cruel and endless. Temüjin learned to steal roots from the frozen earth and to catch fish with his bare hands. The wolves became his companions. He would hear them howling from the ridges and feel comforted, as if their voices spoke to something ancient within him. One night, when hunger gnawed at their bones, Temüjin wandered from the camp and followed a wolf's cry into the hills. There, beneath the full moon, he saw a great white wolf standing upon a rock, eyes glowing like embers. The wolf did not flee, it watched him. Temüjin felt no fear, only recognition. The wind fell silent. Then the wolf lowered its head and stepped toward him. Its breath was warm against his face, and when it howled, the echo shook the mountains. A silver mark appeared upon Temüjin's chest, faint as smoke, the symbol of Tengri's favor. When he returned to camp, Holen saw the mark and wept. "The sky has claimed you fully," she whispered, "but those chosen by the heavens must carry the weight of storms." Years passed. Temüjin became lean and fierce. He hunted wolves and wore their pelts, not as trophies, but as kin. The other children feared him. The elders whispered that his eyes gleamed like a predator's. Yet, when famine struck, he shared his last scraps with the weak. The sky had hardened him, but not yet turned him to stone. One day, his half-brother Bekter stole from their meager catch. The blood of wolves ran hot in Temüjin's veins, and rage overcame mercy. He hunted Bekter down and killed him. When his mother found out, she struck him across the face. "Have you no soul?" she cried. Temüjin looked at her with tears that froze before they could fall. "The sky has no mercy," he said, "only balance." From that moment, a shadow entered his heart, not of evil, but of destiny. He began to understand that to survive the steppe was to command it. The sky tested the strong, not through comfort, but through loss. Each pain carved him deeper, shaping the vessel that would one day hold the will of Tengri. And the wind still whispered to him, "Endure, child of the wolf, it said. The storm remembers your name. When the next spring dawned, Temüjin stood upon a ridge overlooking the valley. The herds moved like living clouds across the plains. Eagles soared above, crying his name in the tongue of gods. He raised his arms to the sky and shouted into the wind, "If you have chosen me, then let me prove worthy. Let me rise, or let me die beneath your gaze." The wind roared in answer, bending the grass like a sea of silver waves. And from that day forward, Temüjin no longer looked for signs of Tengri's will, he became it. The wolf had found its roar. Chapter 3. The Broken Clan. The steppe remembers no mercy, its grass bends to no man, its wind bows to no king. When the tribes cast out Yasuge's family, the eternal sky looked down and remained silent. For silence, too, is a kind of judgment. Holon, proud mother of warriors, wrapped her children in horsehide and led them away from the ashes of their camp. Her face was carved with wind and grief, but her voice did not tremble. "The sky has taken your father," she said to Temüjin, "but it has not taken your will. Remember, my son wolves survive because they hunt together. Protect your kin, and you will never die." But the tribes that once swore loyalty to Yasuge now turned away. The Borjigin name became a curse whispered in the night. The clan abandoned by Tengri, Temüjin, was only a boy, but he bore the gaze of a man already marked by destiny. He saw how hunger hollowed his brother's cheeks, how frost bled the strength from their mother's hands. He learned to build traps from bone and snarefish with strips of sinew. He learned to read the wind, to know when storms would come by the taste of the air. Every day was a battle, not for glory, but for breath. The years after Yasuge's death were years of shadow. Temujin's family roamed the wild like ghosts, sleeping beneath open skies, drinking from frozen streams, hunting mice and marmots when meat was gone. Holon's hair turned white before its time, yet her spirit burned brighter than any flame. At night, she would sit beside the dying embers and tell stories of the Sky Father, Tengri, and the Mother Earth, Itagen. They made the steppe for those with hearts as wide as its plains, she whispered. Do not let hunger make your spirit small. Temüjin listened. He carved those words into his heart like runes. But the world of men is crueler than the wind. The Taichi Oud clan, kin by blood, yet wolves in soul, feared that the son of Yasuge would one day rise to reclaim power, so they hunted him. One morning, when mist still clung to the riverbanks, riders came. Their horses thundered across the frost, their banners snapping like whips of flame. Temüjin, then barely a youth, tried to flee with his family, but the riders were swift. They seized him, bound his hands, and dragged him to their camp like a captured beast. We will teach this cub that the sky has forgotten him, their leaders spat. They fastened a wooden kang, a heavy yoke of shame, around his neck, so he could neither run nor lie down. The sun burned by day, frost gnawed by night. The weight of wood cut into his shoulders until blood soaked his tunic. Yet Temüjin did not cry. He stood in silence, staring at the sky. His lips moved in a whisper only the wind could hear. Tengri, if I am still yours, show me the path. The wind answered, cold and fierce. On the third night, as the moon climbed high, he heard footsteps, soft, uncertain. A young guard, barely older than him, came to offer water. Why do you not beg? The guard asked. Temüjin lifted his head. Because the sky listens only to those who endure. Something in his eyes, black and sharp as obsidian, stirred the boy's heart. When the camp slept, The guard returned and loosened the ropes. "Run," he whispered. Temüjin fled into the darkness, the yoke still upon him. He waded into the Anan River, the ice cutting like knives. Beneath the starlight, he hid among the reeds until the searchers passed. The next day, he broke free, smashing the wooden yoke against a stone. The sound echoed across the valley like a cry of defiance. For days, he wandered. Hunger hollowed his body, but not his will. The wolves shadowed him, keeping distance, yet always near, silent guardians of the chosen. When he finally returned to his mother, Holin embraced him and wept. "You have walked through death and returned," she said. "You are no longer a boy of the earth. You are the son of the sky." From that day, Temüjin carried scars across his shoulders, marks not of shame, but of endurance. Whenever he touched them, he remembered the yoke, the river, the wind, and the unbroken silence of Tengri above. Years passed, and Temüjin's strength grew like a blade tempered by fire. He gathered a small band, outcasts, orphans, wanderers, those who had been betrayed as he was. He spoke to them, not as a Khan, but as a brother. "We have no tribes, no herds, no banners," he said. "But we have each other, and the sky above us. Is that not enough?" They called him Temüjin, the unyielding. With these few, he began to reclaim what was lost. He raided the Teeshad camps that once enslaved him, striking like a wolf in the night, fast, silent, merciless. He stole horses, weapons, food, but never for greed, only for survival. And every time the wind howled across the plains, it carried whispers of his name. But Temüjin did not seek vengeance alone. In his heart grew something greater, the first spark of vision. He looked at the endless tribes scattered like stars and thought, if the sky has one face, why should men have many masters? It was then that the prophecy began to awaken once more. At night, as he slept beneath the constellations, he dreamed of a throne made of bones and banners, and above it, the sky's great eye gazing down. The wolf spirit appeared again, standing beside him. "Rise," it said, "for the broken must become the bond. The hunter must become the storm." Temüjin woke before dawn. The horizon burned crimson, not with fire, but with the light of becoming. He looked to his followers, sleeping like scattered leaves around the embers of their fire, and whispered, "The clans that broke me shall become the empire I forge." The wind stirred, carrying his vow into the heavens, and far above, Tengri, silent and vast, watched as his chosen son began his long ascent from ruin to legend. The steppe trembled. The prophecy was in motion once more. Chapter 4. The Bond of Blood and Oath. The wind over the steppe carried the scent of spring, cold, wild, and sharp, like the breath of Tengri himself. Snow still clung to the northern slopes, but the rivers had begun to sing again, breaking free from winter's chains. It was during this turning of seasons that Temüjin met the one who would shape both his rise and his ruin, Jamuka of the Jadoran, a youth of noble blood and fiery eyes. They met by chance, or perhaps by fate, as the steppe rarely allows coincidence. Temüjin was hunting with his small band of followers when they crossed paths near the banks of the Anan River. Jamuka, mounted upon a gray horse, approached with the grace of a hawk descending from the clouds. "You hunt where my tribe roams," he said, not in anger, but with curiosity. Temüjin looked at him, at the furs of fine sable on his shoulders, the polished bow at his back, and replied calmly, "The wind has no border, neither does hunger." For a moment, silence hung between them, heavy as the horizon. Then Jamuka smiled, sharp, proud, and bright as steel catching sunlight. "Perhaps," he said, "you and I share the same wind." That evening, they shared meat and fermented mare's milk beneath a starlit sky. The fire between them burned low, but the air thrummed with something ancient, the pulse of destiny. They spoke of the scattered tribes, how every clan fought its own war, spilling blood like dust on the wind. They spoke of dreams, of unity, of a world where strength and loyalty would rise above birth. Temüjin's voice was quiet but resolute. A man's greatness should not be born from his tribe, but from his deeds. Jamuka's eyes gleamed. "Then you are not of this world, Temüjin. You speak like the sky itself." They both laughed, but in that laughter there was recognition, the meeting of two souls forged for greatness, bound for conflict. At dawn, they rode out to the high plain, where the grass whispered like 1,000 voices. There, they performed the ancient oath of brotherhood, an act older than kingdoms, sanctified by the eternal blue sky. They slit their thumbs with the same blade and let their blood drip into a shared chalice of mare's milk. The wind rose as they lifted the cup. Jamuka spoke first, his voice carrying across the plains. "Let Tengri witness. From this day, I and Temüjin are one soul in two bodies. We shall rise together, rule together, and die as brothers." Temüjin echoed, his tone solemn and deep. "If ever I betray this bond, may the sky turn its face from me, and the earth refuse my bones." They drank, sealing the oath. The clouds parted. A hawk circled above them, its cry echoing through the vastness. Both men looked up, and in that moment they felt it, the unseen gaze of the Sky Father, acknowledging their vow. Days turned to weeks, and the brothers of oath became inseparable. Together they hunted, rode, and fought. Jamuka, the noble-born, had the grace of a leader. Temüjin, the outcast, had the will of a conqueror. Jamuka taught him the language of power, how to command men, how to use gifts and loyalty as weapons. Temüjin taught Jamuka the art of endurance, how to survive the cold, the hunger, the betrayal of kin. Their men followed them with growing devotion. For the first time, scattered warriors began to move with purpose, the birth of a new kind of brotherhood, bound not by tribe but by choice. Around their fires, songs were sung, songs of the two brothers under the sky, one born of fire, one of stone. One night, as they gazed upon the constellations, Jamuka said, "Temüjin, do you ever wonder why the sky gives men such hunger for more? Even when they have enough, still they reach higher," Temüjin replied softly. "Because the sky made us in its image, endless, restless, and wide." Jamuka smiled, but there was a flicker of shadow in his eyes. "Then beware, brother. The wind that lifts also tears apart." The summer that followed was the season of glory. Temüjin and Jamuka united small bands under their banners. Together they raided the enemies of their youth, Teüjin, Merkit, and Karait outposts. Their victories spread across the plains like fire through dry grass. Temüjin rode at the front, his bow singing, his wolf pelt cloak snapping behind him. Jamuka strategized, striking like lightning from the shadows. The steppe whispered of them, two brothers born under the same sky, destined to rule all beneath it. They shared spoils, honors, and the love of their men. But whispers began to grow, whispers that one flame burned brighter than the other. Some said Temüjin's eyes held a colder fire, the gaze of one who listens not to men, but to destiny. Some said Jamuka's laughter masked envy, that he feared the outcast would surpass the noble. The sky above remained vast and silent, as if holding its breath. In the autumn, before the first snow, they gathered their warriors once more. Beneath the rising moon, Temüjin turned to Jamuka and said, "Brother, I feel the steppe stirring. The tribes are restless. One day, they will need a single hand to lead them." Jamuka's smile was slow. "And whose hand would that be?" Temüjin answered simply, "The one chosen by Tengri." For a heartbeat, the air between them trembled. The wolf howled from a distant hill, and the moon dimmed behind thin clouds. Jamuka looked at him, long, unreadable, then placed a hand upon his shoulder. "Then may the sky judge fairly when that day comes." That night, Temüjin dreamed again. He saw the eternal blue sky open like a vast sea of light. 2 eagles flew side by side, one of gold, one of silver. But soon the silver turned and struck the gold with its talons. Both fell, feathers scattering like sparks upon the steppe. He woke before dawn, sweat cold upon his brow. The horizon was already turning red, not with sunrise, but with omen. And so it was written, the bond of blood that united them under heaven would one day divide the earth. The brothers who swore eternal loyalty would become the 2 poles of fate, and between them the steppe would burn. But for now, they were still bound by oath to souls, riding under the same endless sky, unaware that the wind already whispered their undoing. Chapter 5. The Rise of the Wolf Banner. The wind carried the scent of war. The grass rippled like a sea of silver under the moon, and across it rode a man who once had nothing, no tribe, no herds, no name that the clans would honor. Now, they whispered it in fear and awe. Temüjin, he rode alone that night, the stars vast above him. The world was silent, but alive. Wolves howled in the distance, and the northern lights shimmered like banners of the gods. He halted atop a ridge, where the bones of old warriors lay buried beneath the grass. There he knelt and pressed his palm to the soil. "Tengri," he murmured, "if the sky truly chose me, then grant me not comfort, but strength. Let me be the storm that binds the scattered, the fang that bites the false." The wind rose. In its voice, faint but clear, came the answer, "Rise, son of the steppe." Temüjin returned to his camp before dawn. His followers gathered around him, their faces hard, hungry, loyal. They were men who had lost everything, exiles, slaves, wanderers. Yet, in his presence, they stood tall, as if his spirit lent them their own. He spoke to them not as a Khan, but as one of them. "My brothers," he said, "the steppe devours those who stand alone. The tribes fight and die like wolves without a pack. But what if we became one pack, one fang, one will?" The men stirred, murmuring. Temüjin lifted his bow high, its horn tips gleaming in the firelight. "The sky has no tribe. It watches all men the same. From this day, we fight not for blood or birth, but for loyalty. Let any man who stands beside me be my brother." He drew his dagger and cut his palm. Blood dripped into the fire, hissing as it met the flame. "By this blood," he said, "I vow to lead not with fear, but with purpose, to punish betrayal, to reward the faithful. This is the law of the wolf." His men struck their chests in salute, the rhythm echoing like drums across the steppe. That night, they raised a banner of white felt, stitched with the image of a wolf's head, its eyes made of obsidian stones. The wolf banner, born of exile, bound by oath, fluttered beneath the endless blue. Temüjin's first test came swiftly. The Taishan, his old tormentors, had grown complacent in their arrogance. They believed the boy they once bound in a wooden yoke had vanished into dust. But dust, under pressure, becomes iron. Temüjin struck them like thunder at dawn. His riders swept across the valley in silence, then unleashed a storm of arrows. The Taishiad awoke to death's roar. Temüjin's army moved not as scattered raiders, but as one disciplined, efficient, unyielding. He divided them into units of 10, 100, and 1,000, each led by chosen men of merit, not birth. Strength is not in blood, he told them, but in bond. The wolf does not ask who you are, only whether you will fight beside him. When the battle ended, the steppe was silent once more, save for the cry of crows. Temüjin stood amidst the fallen, his banner still upright. He ordered his men to bury the enemy dead with honor. The sky watches all, he said. Even foes deserve dignity in death. That mercy earned him more than victory. It earned him followers. From among the conquered tribes, men began to come forward. One by one, they bent their knees before him. "We will serve the wolf banner," they said. And Temüjin answered, "Then rise and serve not me, but the vision of one steppe, one sky." The news spread like wildfire. Across the plains, whispers rode the wind. The son of the outcast walks with Tengri's favor. His banner bears the mark of the sacred wolf. He is uniting what none dared to dream. Even the shamans began to speak of omens, lightning striking twice upon the same mountain, wolves gathering without fighting, and a comet burning blue in the northern sky. The elders muttered, "A Khan of destiny is rising." Yet not all hearts rejoiced. From afar, Jamuka watched. His scouts brought word of Temüjin's growing strength, the loyalty of men once loyal to no one. He stood upon his hill, his cloak rippling, eyes dark as storm clouds. "Temüjin," he murmured, "you rise fast, my brother, too fast." One of his warriors asked, "Shall we strike him now, before he grows stronger?" Jamuka shook his head slowly. "Not yet. The sky has not chosen its side. When it does, the steppe will decide between fire and stone." Meanwhile, Temüjin continued to build his dream. He forged alliances through trust, marriages, and shared battles. He rescued his wife Bert, stolen by the Merkits, leading a daring night raid that became legend. When he returned with her, his men hailed him not as a chieftain, but as Khan. Temüjin refused the title at first. "A Khan rules men. I serve them." But the cries rose louder, echoing across the plains. "Temüjin, the Khan of the Blue Wolf. Temüjin, the Uniter." And beneath the cold stars, the wolf banner lifted higher, its white fabric glowing like a shard of moonlight against the dark. That night, Temüjin climbed alone to the peak above his camp. The wind howled around him, carrying voices of the past, his fathers, his mothers, his ancestors. From the east rose a pale dawn. Temüjin knelt, pressing his forehead to the earth. "Tengri," he whispered, "if this path is mine, then let my heart never waver. Let my banner stand until the sky itself fades." A sudden gust swept over the ridge, and the banner below caught the wind. Snapping like thunder, Temüjin looked up. The sky was vast and clear, the color of destiny itself. He smiled faintly. Then it begins, and far below, his army stirred, thousands of hooves striking the earth in rhythm, the cry of a new nation rising into the dawn. Thus began the age of the wolf, when the tribes of the steppe first looked upon one banner and saw not enemies, but kin. And under that banner, Temüjin, son of the outcast, child of the wind, took his first true step toward becoming Genghis Khan, the lord of the eternal blue sky. Chapter 6: The Fracture of Brotherhood. The eternal blue sky stretched wide and silent, too vast to choose a side. Beneath it, the steppe trembled with the sound of hooves and the whisper of destiny uncoiling like a storm. For many moons, Temüjin's banner had risen higher with every battle. His army disciplined, loyal, bound not by tribe but by oath, grew stronger than any in living memory. The scattered clans, weary of endless raids, began to gather under his command. He offered protection, order, and justice, a new way of life that defied the ancient chaos of the steppes. And yet, not all saw unity as salvation. Some saw it as defiance of the old ways, an insult to the proud freedom of the tribes. Among them stood Jamuka, once brother of blood, now shadowed by doubt. When the two met again, it was not as hunters or companions, but as leaders of nations unborn. They faced each other in the valley of the Kurlan, where the grass shone like green fire beneath the sun. Between them fluttered the banners of their people, Temüjin's white wolf and Jamuka's golden falcon. Jamuka dismounted first, his cloak trailing in the dust. "Brother," he called, voice steady but heavy. "You've gathered the tribes as though the sky itself whispered your name. Tell me, do you now claim the throne of Tengri?" Temüjin looked at him, calm as stone. "I claim nothing but order. The steppe drowns in its own blood. If we do not unite it, it will devour us all." Jamuka's eyes narrowed. "Unite or rule? There is a difference." Temüjin said nothing. The silence between them was deeper than the wind. At last, Jamuka sighed. "When we swore brotherhood, I thought we would rise together. But I see now there cannot be two suns in one sky." He turned to mount his horse. "May Tengri decide which of us it favors." And with that, the bond of blood was broken. The days that followed were filled with smoke and prophecy. The steppe split in two, those who sought order under Temüjin, and those who clung to the old chaos beside Jamuka. Families divided, brothers chose opposite sides. Herds were slaughtered, yurts burned, rivers ran red with betrayal. They called it the War of the Two Khans. Jamuka's army outnumbered Temüjin's 2-1, filled with nobles and warriors born to command. But Temüjin's men, the sons of outcasts, slaves, and wanderers, fought like wolves, defending their den. When the first battle came, thunder rolled over the plains, as if the sky itself waged war. The two armies clashed in a storm of arrows and hooves. The sound was like mountains breaking. Temüjin rode at the front, Excalibur's eastern echo in his hand, a curved blade forged by a blacksmith said to be blessed by Tengri himself. His banner of the white wolf streamed above him, catching the light like flame. Jamuka's golden falcon sword opposite. For 3 days and nights, they fought, tribe against tribe, brother against brother. Jamuka's warriors were fierce, but their unity was brittle. Temüjin's soldiers moved as one body, disciplined and silent, obeying signals instead of chaos. When the dawn of the 4th day arose, Temüjin's army encircled Jamuka's camp. Smoke blackened the horizon. The wind reeked of sweat and iron and death. Temüjin dismounted and looked upon the field. Thousands lay still, men who had once hunted, laughed, and sworn brotherhood beneath the same sky. He closed his eyes and whispered, "Forgive us, Tengri, for turning the steppe against itself." Jamuka escaped that day, vanishing into the mountains with a handful of loyal riders. But his defeat left the tribes shaken. Many of his followers deserted, joining Temüjin's cause. Still, Temüjin did not rejoice. One night, as he sat beside the fire, Bert came to him. Her eyes were gentle, her voice quiet as the wind. "You have won," she said. "Why do you look to the stars with sorrow?" Temüjin answered. "Because the stars once watched two brothers dream beneath them, and now one must fade so the other may rise." Weeks later, scouts brought news. Jamuka had been captured by his own men and delivered in chains to Temüjin's camp. Temüjin ordered that he be brought before him, not as a prisoner, but as a guest. Jamuka stood proud, even in defeat. His hair was unbound, his face marked by wind and battle. "So it ends," he said. "The wolf has devoured the falcon." Temüjin stepped forward. "You are still my brother in the eyes of the sky. I will not kill you. Stay, and I will give you command beside me." Jamuka laughed, not cruelly, but with weary pride. "Two cannot share the same shadow. If I live, men will whisper of the old days. Let them not forget that the steppe was once wild." He knelt. "Grant me death, brother, and honor me with mercy." Temüjin's hand trembled, but he nodded. Jamuka was executed swiftly, without pain, as he had wished. When his body was burned, the flames rose high and bright, scattering sparks into the night sky like golden birds. Temüjin watched in silence, his face unreadable. Bert stood beside him and whispered, "Is this the price of the sky's favor?" Temüjin did not answer. He only murmured, "The sky favors none, only the strong who can bear its silence." When dawn came, the ashes of Jamuka's pyre drifted over the plains. Temüjin mounted his horse and raised his hand toward the horizon. "From this day," he declared, "there shall be no more brothers in war, no more tribes divided by pride. We are one people under one sky." The warriors knelt. The wind carried their cry across the land, Mongol, and far above, Tengri's vast dome shimmered with morning light, neither in blessing nor in curse, but in acknowledgement. The age of blood had ended. The age of the empire had begun. Chapter 7: The Birth of the Great Horde. The wind of the steppes carried the scent of spring, wild grass, melting snow, and the faint smoke of distant yurts. It was the season of rebirth, and so too would the world itself be reborn. Temüjin rode at the head of his army, not as a warlord now, but as a ruler of destiny. Behind him followed the banners of 100 tribes, the white wolves of the Borjigin, the soaring cranes of the Teishad, the twin spears of the Anjurat, and many more. Each banner told a story of battles won, betrayals forgiven, and oaths reforged in fire. For the first time in living memory, the steppe was united, not by bloodline, not by fear, but by will. They gathered on the banks of the Anan River, where the sky curved like a vast dome of sapphire. Thousands assembled chieftains, shamans, warriors, and women who had borne the sons of the steppes. Their yurts formed a sea of white felt and horsehair, glittering beneath the rising sun. A great circle was drawn in the earth, sacred to Tengri. At its center, Temüjin stood barefoot, his armor polished like ice, his eyes calm as the northern wind. A shaman stepped forward, carrying a bowl of fermented mare's milk. He lifted it toward the heavens and cried, "Eternal blue sky, behold, the tribes have gathered as one herd beneath your gaze. Let the wolf who unites them be known to all." The people fell silent as the shaman turned to Temüjin. He dipped his fingers into the milk and anointed Temüjin's brow. From this day, the shaman intoned, "You are no longer Temüjin, son of Yasuge. You are Genghis Khan, the oceanic ruler, whose power shall flow across the earth as rivers flow to the sea." The crowd erupted, a roar like thunder rolling through the plains. Men beat their shields, women sang, children shouted his name, Genghis Khan, Genghis Khan. And for the first time, the wind seemed to echo it back. When the noise faded, Genghis raised his hand. "Listen well," he said. "The sky has given us this land, but the sky does not grant peace. Peace must be built by those who are strong enough to bind it." He drew his sword and thrust it into the earth before him. "This blade no longer serves conquest, it serves law. From this moment, let there be one rule for all tribes." The Yasa, the shamans, brought forth scrolls of leather and ink made from ash and mare's blood. Before the people, Genghis spoke the first decrees of the Yasa. "No tribe shall raid another within the great horde. Every man shall owe loyalty not to tribe, but to the Khan. The weak shall be protected, the strong held accountable. Those who betray oaths shall face the sky's wrath." Each decree was met with murmurs, awe, fear, and hope intermingled. Never before had the steppe known such order. Where chaos once ruled, now there was law, born not of fear, but of purpose. That night, a feast was held beneath the open sky. Hundreds of fires burned bright, and meat roasted on spits as songs of old heroes filled the air. Genghis sat upon a low dais, beside Bert, his queen, his anchor, his mirror. He watched the tribes mingle and thought of the long path behind him, the hunger of his youth, the betrayal of Jamuka, the blood that had fed the grass beneath his feet. Bert leaned close. "You have done what none before you dared. The tribes speak one tongue now, your name." Genghis smiled faintly. "The sky grants me strength, but it is not done testing me. The world beyond these plains stirs kingdoms of silken stone, waiting to rise or fall." He looked to the horizon, where the moon touched the mountains. "There will be no peace," he whispered. "Only the next horizon." At dawn, he summoned his generals, Subutai, Jelm, Geb, Kubli, and the brothers of his soul. Together they stood before a massive white gear, where a map of the world had been drawn in ink and bone. He pointed east, toward the lands of the Jin dynasty. "The golden walls stand high, but walls are nothing before the will of the wind." Then west, toward the deserts and the cities of Khwarezm. "There are kings who call themselves sons of heaven. We shall see how they face the sons of the steppe." Subutai bowed. "You dream beyond the borders of men," Genghis answered. "I dream as wide as the sky because it has no walls." The following days were filled with ritual and order. Messengers rode across the plains, carrying the new decrees of Yasa to every tribe. Blacksmiths forged new weapons, stamped with the mark of the wolf. The banners of the great horde rose high, stitched in white and gold, the colors of purity and divine favor. Children were taught to speak not of their clan, but of their people. 1,000 tribes became one name, Mongol. When the final ceremonies ended, Genghis rode alone to the edge of the Anan River. He dismounted, knelt, and placed his hands upon the earth. "Mother Steppe," he murmured, "I was born in your hunger and your silence. I have broken my brothers, my foes, and my heart to give you unity. Now, guide me where your winds shall blow." Above him, the sky darkened, then flared with light. A hawk circled high, crying once before soaring into the sun. Genghis rose and turned away. Behind him, the river carried its reflection, the image of a man who would become legend. From that day forth, the great horde began to move like a living storm, endless, relentless, and guided by the will of one man, blessed by the eternal blue sky. The steppe was silent once more, but beneath that silence beat the heart of empire. Thus was born the age of the Mongol, Chapter 8: The March of the Eternal Blue Sky. When the spring winds swept once more across the steppes, they carried with them not the scent of grass, but the echo of marching hooves. The tribes of the great horde had become one body, one breath, one heartbeat beneath the eternal sky, and the heart that beat within them was Genghis Khan. He stood upon a rise of earth, his cloak fluttering like a black flame. Before him, tens of thousands of horsemen waited, silent, disciplined, each one bearing the white banner of the wolf. The morning sun burned behind them, turning their armor to silver fire. "Children of the steppe," he called, his voice rising above the wind. "The sky has given us dominion over the earth, as the wolf has dominion over the herd. Beyond these plains lie kingdoms that wall themselves from the wind, that bind their people in chains. Shall we let the world sleep behind its walls?" A roar thundered in reply, the sound of 1,000 souls answering destiny. "No, the sky is boundless. The sky is ours." Genghis Khan raised his sword high, and the blade caught the sun. Its reflection spread like lightning across the ranks, as though Tengri himself had blessed the steel. "Then ride," he said softly. "Ride until the world remembers the sound of Mongol thunder." The horde moved like a tide, swift, silent, and merciless. From the Anan River to the borders of the Jin Empire, they swept through mountains, forests, and frozen passes. The wolves of the north ran alongside their horses, as if guiding them toward the scent of conquest. Villages that once mocked the steppe now burned beneath the blue sky. Walls crumbled. Cities fell like sandcastles before the storm. For every fortress there came a whisper, "The sky rides with him." Yet Genghis Khan was not driven by greed. His wars were prayers written in blood, each battle a verse to Tengri. When his soldiers plundered, he punished them. When they faltered, he reminded them, "The sky grants us victory, not for gold, but for destiny." At Zhongdu, the golden capital of the Jin, the Khan's armies faced their greatest trial. The city stood tall and proud, its walls glimmering like the horizon itself. The defenders mocked the horsemen, calling them savages, dust without roots. But dust carried by the wind can bury mountains. For months, the Mongols besieged the city. They built towers higher than walls, dug tunnels beneath, and loosed arrows that darkened the sun. Each night, Genghis Khan stood before the burning sky and prayed to Tengri, "If I am truly your son, let these walls fall. Let the sky see that no empire stands eternal but yours." When spring returned, the city gates broke under fire and fury. The horde surged in like a flood, disciplined, unstoppable, guided by their Khan's will. And as dawn rose over the smoldering ruins, the people of the south looked upon the banners of the wolf and knew a new heaven had taken hold of the earth. From there, the Mongol tide rolled on. They crossed deserts where no man survived, rivers that froze beneath their hooves, and mountains that seemed to touch Tengri's throne. Each conquest became a myth, the fortress of the Tenggit, where the walls bled under Mongol fire. The city of Bukhara, where Genghis entered a mosque and declared, "If you fear your God, then you should fear mine more, for he rides with me." The Battle of the Burning Plain, where 30,000 enemies vanished beneath smoke and storm. The world trembled before a name carried by the wind, Genghis Khan. To the east, he was called the Scourge of Heaven. To the west, the Lord of the Winds. But among his people, he remained the son of Tengri, chosen, eternal. One night, beneath a silver moon, Genghis sat alone beside his campfire. The steppe stretched endlessly around him, Quiet as a grave, Subbatai approached, bowing deeply. "My Khan," he said, "we have conquered lands beyond the horizon. Shall we not rest? Let the sky smile upon us in peace." Genghis did not answer at once. He looked up at the stars, the endless eyes of Tengri watching. "Peace," he murmured, "is a dream for those who fear loss. But the wolf does not dream. When he sleeps, he dreams only of the next hunt." Subbatai bowed his head. "And when there are no more hunts, my Khan," Genghis turned to him, eyes cold as moonlight, "then the wolf will chase the wind itself." The years of conquest followed like rolling thunder. Empires that had stood for centuries fell in a decade. The Silk Road turned from a path of trade to a highway of banners. Everywhere the symbol of the white wolf spread a mark of unity through fear and awe. And yet, in the heart of the Khan, a shadow stirred. He began to dream of his youth, of Jamuka, his fallen brother. He saw again the bond they once swore beneath the stars, to bring peace to the steppes. Had he done that, or had he brought only endless war? He sought the answer in the sky, but Tengri was silent. Only the wind replied, whispering through his tent like an old friend's voice, fading in memory. At last, when the eastern lands were subdued and the borders stretched farther than any map could hold, Genghis summoned his shamans. They gathered at dawn, chanting around him as smoke curled toward the heavens. He raised his hands and prayed, "Eternal sky, I have carried your will to the ends of the earth. If I have pleased you, grant my people peace. If I have strayed, grant me one more war, so I may cleanse my soul." And in that moment, a shooting star tore across the dawn, bright, fierce, and vanishing into the horizon. The shamans fell to their knees. "The sky has spoken," they whispered. "The Khan's path is not yet done." Genghis Khan stood, feeling the fire in his blood rise again. He looked west toward the lands of Persia, Khwarezm, and beyond. There, new empires waited, proud and blind beneath their false heavens. He smiled, mounting his horse. "Then let the sky ride once more," he said. And as the first light of morning struck his armor, the horde began to move again, a sea of iron and faith rolling ever forward under the boundless blue. For as long as the wind would blow, the march of the eternal sky would never end. Chapter X, The Wrath of the Eternal Sky. The empire stretched farther than sight, from the cold forests of Siberia to the burning deserts of Persia, from the wall of China to the Black Sea, where the sun sank into blood. Under the banners of the Wolf Road, millions. Every kingdom bowed, every city trembled, every river carried whispers of one name, Genghis Khan. The great horde had become a storm that never ended. It devoured nations and left silence behind. Even the winds of the world seemed to blow at his command. And yet, above that endless conquest, the sky watched in silence. One night, when the moon rose red as flame, the shamans gathered around the Khan's tent. They burned herbs and bones, seeking signs in the smoke. The eldest among them, Koku, stepped forth, his eyes blind but blazing. He bowed before Genghis and said, "My Khan, the sky is restless. The stars move like wounded beasts. Tengri has seen the blood that stains the wind." Genghis frowned. "Has the sky not blessed my sword? Have I not carried his will across the world?" "The sky grants power," the shaman whispered, "but not without cost. You have conquered men, but can you conquer destiny?" Genghis turned away. Destiny bows before the one strong enough to seize it. But as he spoke, thunder rolled across a cloudless night. The shamans fell to their knees, the sound of Tengri's warning echoing across the plains. In the following years, the Khan's armies crossed into Khwarezm, a proud empire that dared defy the Mongol word. Its ruler had killed Genghis's emissaries, sacred envoys, under the sky's peace. For that sin, there would be no mercy. From Samarkand to Urgench, the world burned. Cities of marble were turned to ash. Rivers ran red for weeks. The horde rode through streets of fire, their hooves crushing temples and thrones alike. And above it all, Genghis Khan watched, silent, unmoving, like a god of judgment. When the last city fell, he rode to the edge of the ruins and dismounted. He looked upon the smoke and said softly, "This is not conquest. This is reckoning," but in the wind. He thought he heard another voice, the whisper of Tengri himself. Even the mightiest storm forgets its purpose. That winter, a great blizzard struck the steppes. It came without warning, a white wrath that swallowed whole armies. Horses froze mid-gallop, tents were torn from the earth. Men vanished beneath drifts taller than yurts. For 7 days and 7 nights, the snow did not cease. When at last the sun returned, half the Khan's encampment was gone. Genghis stood upon the hill of bones, his cloak heavy with frost. Subutai approached, face pale. "My Khan," he said quietly, "the sky takes what it once gave." The Khan's eyes were like iron. "The sky tests me." He raised his arms to the heavens. "If I have angered you, Tengri, then strike me, not my people." The wind howled in answer, cold and endless. It carried no forgiveness. In the years that followed, the Khan grew older. His hair turned silver, his strength unyielding, but shadowed by weariness. He had conquered the world, yet sleep eluded him. He dreamed of wolves running through storms, of rivers filled with ghosts, of Jamukha's voice whispering, "Brother, did we not seek peace? Why does the world still burn?" He awoke one night, heart pounding, and went outside his tent. The sky above was dark, moonless, infinite. He knelt and whispered, "Tengri, have I become what you desired, or what you feared?" The only reply was the sigh of the wind through the grass. When news reached him of rebellions in the west, Genghis rose once more. Despite his age, he led his warriors into the Gobi Desert, a land of death and silence. Each night, his men saw him ride ahead, alone, speaking to the stars as though in argument. One dawn, Subutai found him staring into the horizon. "The sky grows distant," the Khan murmured. "It no longer answers me." "The sky does not speak," Subutai replied gently. "It watches." Genghis smiled faintly. "Then let it watch what I still can do." The campaign against the Tangut would be his last. The desert burned by day and froze by night, but the Khan pressed onward. The Tangut king begged for mercy. Genghis gave none. When the final fortress fell, the flames reached the stars themselves. As the smoke rose, the Khan's horse stumbled, struck by an arrow from the shadows. He fell, bruised and bleeding, but his fury burned brighter than pain. "Do not stop," he commanded. "The wrath of Tengri must be complete." The army obeyed, destroying the Tangut kingdom utterly. When it was done, the Khan's tent was silent, save for the sound of his breathing, shallow, fading. That night, the shamans came to him one last time. "The sky's wrath is ended," they said. "It is time to return." Genghis looked at them and whispered, "If I die, bury me where no man can find me. Let no tomb claim me, for my spirit belongs to the wind." He closed his eyes and spoke his final prayer. "Tengri, I was your storm. I have scattered empires and raised the bones of kings as dust beneath your sky. If I have failed you, forgive me. If I have fulfilled you, then take me home." A silence fell, deep and endless. Outside, lightning split the heavens without thunder, a flash that turned the steppes to white. When it faded, the Khan was gone. His body lay still, but his face was calm, as though listening to the wind one last time. The shamans lifted their hands and chanted, "He returns to the eternal sky." And somewhere far above, beyond clouds and stars, the spirit of the wolf rose to join the storm. The empire mourned. No one knew where the great Khan was buried. Some said the rivers themselves changed course to hide him. Others swore they saw a white wolf watching from the mountains that night, eyes bright as flame. But all who rode beneath the blue sky felt his presence still, in the wind that roared across the steppes, in the thunder that rolled over distant lands, in the whisper that said, "No empire is eternal, only the sky." Chapter 10: The Shadows of Empire. When the great Khan was gone, the wind did not stop. It howled across the steppes as it always had, cold, eternal, and full of voices. But to those who listened, it no longer carried command, it carried memory. The empire he built still stood, vast beyond imagining, strong as iron, rich as legend. From sunrise to sunset, riders bore his banners across deserts and rivers. But without the hand that once guided them, the banners began to drift like leaves upon the wind. They said the Khan's sons ruled in his name. They said the law of Yasa bound all men beneath the same sky. But already the wolves had begun to circle each other once more. In Karakoram, the new capital, Gadai, the chosen son, sat upon a throne of silver and iron. Around him gathered the generals and princes of the horde, men who had ridden beside his father, who had seen the world bow and burn. They spoke of conquest, of rebuilding, of finishing what Genghis began. But their eyes were hungry. The sky above them was vast, but their hearts were small. One night, as the council feasted, a storm broke without warning. Thunder rolled, shaking the walls. Torches flared blue. The shamans cried that Tengri was watching, that the spirit of the great Khan walked among them. Gadai rose, his cup trembling. "Let the sky watch," he said. "I am the son of Genghis. The empire is mine by birth and by will." The lightning flashed, and for an instant, every man saw a shadow standing behind him, a tall figure in wolf hide, and iron eyes burning like the sun through storm clouds. The music stopped. No one spoke. By dawn, the storm was gone, but fear lingered like smoke, and whispers spread through the horde that the spirit of the wolf watched and judged. Years passed, and the empire grew outward still, into Korea, into the burning sands of the Middle East, even toward the far edges of Europe. The world trembled beneath Mongol hooves once more. Yet within the heart of Karakoram, the rot had begun. Brothers turned against brothers. Generals carved their own domains. The name of Genghis Khan became both prayer and weapon, invoked by all but understood by none. The Yasa, once sacred, was broken by ambition. The unity he forged through blood and law dissolved like frost beneath the morning sun. The empire that once moved as one mind now bled from within, a wounded beast that did not yet know it was dying. One winter night, as Gadai lay drunk and weary in his yurt, a dream came to him. He stood upon a field of bones, and above him stretched a black sky without stars. From the horizon came a rider, white-cloaked, silent, carrying a bow of flame. "Father," Gadai whispered. The rider stopped. Through the veil of mist, two eyes gleamed, not in anger, but in sorrow. "You ride without direction," said the voice of Genghis Khan, carried on the wind. "You speak my name, but you do not hear the sky. I gave you an empire to unite the world. You have made it a mirror of your greed." Gadai fell to his knees. "What would you have me do?" But when he looked up, the rider was gone, and the wind was empty once more. He awoke at dawn, heart pounding, only to find that the fire in his tent had gone cold. That day, he decreed a new campaign, as if conquest could silence the whisper of guilt. Far to the west, beyond mountains and rivers, the sons of Genghis fought their own wars. In Persia, in Rus, in the lands of Europe, they burned and built in equal measure. Each claimed to serve the eternal sky, but each saw a different horizon. And, above them all, unseen, the spirit of the great Khan wandered. He rode the winds that once carried his banners, watched the cities rise and fall where his shadow had once passed. He saw glory turn to greed, unity to division, and strength to pride. The storm he had unleashed upon the world now raged without purpose, and even Tengri seemed to weep. In the steppe where no empire could endure, the old shamans still sang of him, not as a conqueror, but as a warning. They said that when the sons of the wolf devoured each other, the sky itself would dim, and the grass would forget the sound of hooves. One night, as the moon bled red over Karakoram, a rider appeared at the city gates. He bore no flag, no weapon, only a single white feather, symbol of peace. When asked who he served, he answered simply, "The sky." He entered the city, walked to the central square, and vanished in the wind. By morning, the palace was struck by lightning, and from that day, no ruler dared to sleep beneath its roof. The people whispered that the great Khan had returned to reclaim what was his, not to rule, but to remind. Years became generations. The empire shattered into 4 great khanates: the Golden Horde, the Chagatai, the Ilkhanate, and the Yuan of the East. Each claimed descent from the son of the sky. Each waged war against the others. And in the silence between battles, when the wind blew cold, some swore they heard a voice, deep, distant, sorrowful, calling through the grass, "The wolf is dead, but his howl remains." The shamans said it was the spirit of Genghis Khan, wandering beneath Tengri's endless vault, waiting for the day when men would remember what unity meant, not through conquest, but through peace. Until then, his shadow would remain, cast long and dark across the empire he built, a shadow that no sun could erase. Chapter 11. The journey beyond the desert of bones, when the breath of life left the great Khan. The earth trembled, and the sky turned the color of iron. The wind that had followed him all his life rose one last time, carrying the whisper of his name into the void, Temüjin. Then there was silence. No banners, no thunder of hooves, only the sound of the wind sighing over endless dunes. He awoke in a land of shadow and sand, beneath a sky without stars. The world stretched forever, a vast desert made of the bones of kings and warriors, each grain of dust a memory of conquest. He was no longer flesh and blood, but a shape of wind and will, a ghost crowned by echoes. Genghis looked down and saw that his armor was gone. Only the marks of battle remained, scars made of light across his spirit. He walked, for there was nothing else to do. The sand hissed beneath his feet like serpents, whispering, "Khan of the world, where is your empire now?" He did not answer. He only walked. After what might have been days or centuries, he came upon a figure sitting upon a throne of skulls. It was a man, but older than time. His eyes were empty, sockets burning with blue fire. "Who are you?" Genghis asked. "I am the keeper of dust," the figure replied. "I count the bones of those who thought themselves eternal." The keeper lifted a skull from the sand. "Here lies the pharaoh who called himself a god. Here the emperor who burned worlds to ash. All their names, once sung, are now silence. What makes you different, wolf of the steppe?" Genghis bowed his head. "Nothing," he said, "except that I still walk." The keeper smiled, a sound like wind through hollow bones. "Then walk, Temüjin. Beyond this desert lies the truth you sought in life." And the great Khan walked on. He came upon a river, black as night, flowing not with water, but with memories. Voices rose from it, the cries of the fallen, the pleas of those he conquered. "Why did you burn our cities?" One voice asked. "Why did you kill my sons?" Another wept. He stared into the current and saw his own reflection, but it was not the Khan. It was the boy, Temüjin, hungry, hunted, clutching a piece of iron and dreaming of power. "I brought order," he whispered. "I ended chaos." But the river laughed and became chaos itself. He turned away. The voices followed him, fading only when he reached the foot of a great mountain, a mountain made of ash, spears, and forgotten oaths. At its base sat a woman veiled in white. Her eyes were like the moon upon snow. When she spoke, her voice carried both warmth and judgment. "You built a world of fear," she said, "but in your heart you sought peace." He knew her face, Bert, his first love. The woman who had once called him husband before the storms of war carried him away. "I did what I must," he said. "You did what you believed," she answered. "But belief is not always truth." She reached out, and the desert wind stilled. "Climb," she said. "The summit awaits the reckoning." He looked upon the mountain, its slopes glimmering with the armor of the dead, its peak lost in clouds that shimmered like silver fire. He climbed. As he ascended, the spirits of those he had known appeared before him. His brothers, his enemies, his sons. Each spoke a fragment of his past. "You betrayed blood to forge an empire. You united the tribes but broke the peace. You became the voice of Tengri, but did you ever listen?" He climbed until his breath became wind, until his legs were nothing but will. At last, he stood at the summit, where a single figure waited, vast, formless, radiant. The air itself bowed before it. "Tengri Genghis," whispered. The sky god spoke not in words, but in thunder and silence. The world around them unfolded, the steppe, the rivers, the stars, the cries of the newborn and the dying. All the things the Khan had ever known now lay bare before him. "You sought to bring the world under one law," said the voice of Tengri, "but you forgot that the sky covers all without rule. You were my storm, Temüjin, my instrument of change. But every storm must end." The Khan knelt. "Then what am I now?" "You are the wind that follows the storm," said Tengri. "No longer conqueror, but whisper. No longer ruler, but memory." And as the words faded, the mountain dissolved into light. He felt the weight of his sins rise from him like smoke. Below, he saw the world, his empire broken into fragments, but his people still riding beneath the open sky, singing songs of the wolf and the hawk. He smiled. "Let them ride," he murmured. "Let the sky judge them as it judged me." The light enveloped him, and Genghis Khan became the wind, racing across the steppes, through the bones of old cities, through the hearts of his descendants. Even now, when storms howl across Mongolia, the nomads say, "The Khan rides again," but they no longer speak the name with fear. They whisper it like a prayer, for strength, for unity, for the wisdom to rule without the sword. Chapter 1. To the eternal sky. There is a sky above the world that never fades. It stretches beyond mountains, beyond deserts, beyond time itself, blue and vast, watching all things rise and fall. It was under that sky that Temüjin was born, and under that same sky that he died. But the sky remembers. It always remembers. When the great Khan became the wind, his spirit did not rest. It wandered across the steppes he once ruled, where the grass bowed like prayer and the rivers shimmered with memory. Every place he had conquered, every battle he had fought, had become quiet again. Yet something had changed. In the silence, he heard not the cries of war, but the songs of his people, deep, solemn, filled with longing. Songs that spoke not of conquest, but of belonging. The empire he forged had scattered into dust, but the fire of his dream still burned in the hearts of those who called the steppe home. He drifted among them, unseen, but present, in the flicker of every campfire, in the breath of every horse that galloped across the plain, in the echo of every child's laughter carried on the wind. In one of the valleys, where the wind never ceased, a young shepherd boy was born. He grew up hearing the tales of the great Khan, how he had united the tribes, crossed mountains, and spoke to the sky as if it were his brother. When storms gathered, the boy would look upward and whisper, "O sky, if the Khan still rides, let him protect our flocks." And sometimes the clouds would break, the rain would ease, and a hawk would circle above. A sign, the elders said, that the spirit of Temüjin still rode beneath Tengri's gaze. Far beyond the steppes, in lands once touched by his shadow, his name had become legend. In Persia, they called him the Wrath of God. In China, the Son of Heaven's Fire. In Europe, the Scourge and the Storm. But to the Mongols, to those who still rode beneath the open sky, he was not a monster nor a saint. He was memory made wind. Each winter, when the blizzards howled across the plains, the shamans gathered around sacred fires. They painted their faces with ash and raised their voices to the heavens, crying, "Tengri, watch over the soul of your chosen one. Let his spirit guard the steppe and guide our people." And in the storm's heart, they said the wind would shift, soft, steady, familiar, as if someone still listened. But even the sky grows lonely, and so it called to him once more. A voice older than thunder whispered through the wind, "Temüjin, son of the sky, come home." He rose from the plains, like smoke from a sacred fire, riding upon a phantom horse of starlight. Below him, the world stretched like a sea, green and gold and endless. He saw what his people had become, riders who no longer fought for blood, but for the freedom of the open land. Fathers teaching their sons to ride, mothers teaching their daughters to sing the old songs. No empire, no crown, only the sky. They have learned, he whispered, not from my sword, but from my silence. At the horizon, where the world met the heavens, a great gate of light appeared, woven from wind, fire, and memory. There, beneath its arch, stood his mother Holin, his wife Bert, and all the warriors who had fallen before him. They were not ghosts now, but light, each soul burning like a star in the dusk. They bowed as he approached. Holin smiled, her eyes like the dawn. "You have walked far, my son, too far," he answered softly, "and yet not far enough." Bert stepped forward, touching his face with a hand made of mist. Did you find what you sought? He looked past her, toward the endless expanse of sky. I sought to unite the world, but the world was never meant to be conquered, only understood. She smiled. Then you have finally won, my Khan. As he stepped through the gate, the wind around him rose in a great spiral, a storm without violence, a song without words. His form dissolved into pure light, his voice echoing across eternity. I am the son of the sky. I am the wind that binds all lands. As long as the steppe breathes, I will never die. And so the legend of Genghis Khan did not end in death. It became the breath of the earth itself, the whisper that moves through the grass, the thunder that rolls over the mountains, the pulse of the eternal wind. The nomads say that when the dawn burns red over the plains, and the horses stir restlessly before battle or storm, it is because the Khan rides again, not to conquer, but to remind the living of their strength. For though empires crumble and kings fade into dust, the sky endures. And somewhere within its vast blue heart, the spirit of Temüjin still rides, laughing, wild and free, forever beneath the eternal sky.